evening, I'm Sandra Sully. This is the Late Night News. Heading the Late Night News, Downer's partners tell him he risks a coalition split. Angry protesters give Brereton a taste of the aircraft noise blockade they claim will cripple Sydney Airport. And a new threat in the skies, a mid-air blast in a jumbo jet, Filipino extremists claim responsibility. First tonight, more trouble for Liberal leader Alexander Downer, this time from his coalition partners. The National Party's federal president has told Mr Downer he'll split the coalition if he again ignores Conservative views on key issues. The warning comes just as another poll shows another fall in Mr Downer's support amongst the public.
Confirmation today, Alexander Downer's insistence the coalition not oppose the sexual privacy bill brought the National Party to the brink of walking out of the coalition.
I'd have to say that we believe in hindsight that the handling of the sexual legislation wasn't handled the best.
That echoes the sentiments of the National Senate leader Ron Boswell, who was forced to resign shadow cabinet on Friday after voting against the sexual privacy bill. Senator Boswell then claimed his own leader was victim of Alexander Downer's poor leadership.
He had to support Downer against what he believed was in the best interest of his party for coalition unity.
That vote of no confidence in Alexander Downer has strengthened the Nationals' resolve to resist the Liberal leader in future.
There has to be issues that the National Party will not bend on.
If that isn't enough trouble for Mr Downer, the first of the post-Parliament opinion polls confirms how tough a job he's going to have rehabilitating his leadership over the summer. In the Time Morgan poll, approval of Mr Downer fell 1% to 19, his lowest ever, while Paul Keating recorded his highest ever rating of 61% as preferred Prime Minister, 38 points clear of Mr Downer. Not so good for Labor. High-profile conservationist Bob Brown announced today he'll stand as a Green Senate candidate.
I think we are going to win this Senate seat.
If he's right, it's sure to be at Labor's expense. Paul Bongiorno, 10 News.
In Sydney today, it was the Keating government which was unpopular with a group protesting over airport noise. The demonstrators gave a taste of what's to come when Sydney Airport is blockaded next week, closing access to part of it for half an hour. Just one person's response to living under the third runway flight path. 300 demonstrators gathered outside Mascot's International Terminal, some trying to take the protest inside.
Today's protest was organised to be peaceful. It now stands as a warning to police about what they'll do next Saturday when they blockade the airport.
We're going to try and handle the blockade. If it goes ahead as planned, it may be difficult to stop.
Demonstrators were up before sunrise outside the house of Federal Aviation Minister Laurie Brereton with a noisy message the whole neighbourhood couldn't ignore.
Oh, it's lies, Laurie lies. With each lie you tell, you climb higher.
Later, a group took their protest to the airport where they voiced their anger.
The reinstatement of operations as they were before they illegitimately opened the third runway.
And mayors from affected suburbs finalised their plans for Saturday's blockade, vowing to make it an issue of national political importance.
We will launch a national appeal for funds to fund an ongoing campaign in relation to the airport.
All that is known of blockade plans is that it will affect domestic and international terminals and perhaps be launched by land and sea. Belinda Cole, 10 News.
Meantime, in Melbourne, a big demonstration by anti-Grand Prix protesters. They cut through fences and broke police lines in yet another bid to stop the race being held at Albert Park. Police couldn't prevent demonstrators, including a former premier, from getting into construction areas.
Even as today's mass meeting of Grand Prix opponents got underway, the movement was still recruiting members to the cause.
Work, dinner parties or on the tram, everyone wants to be a member of Save Albert Park.
Despite the enthusiasm, protest numbers were less than half those at the beginning of the push to keep Formula One out of Albert Park. But what they lacked in numbers was compensated for in commitment.
Look behind me, what do you see? There's a fence blocking us out of the park, and it's not going to stay there.
All was peaceful among the demonstrators as they lined up for a symbolic mass tying of ribbons on the high perimeter fence now bordering the Grand Prix construction area. Police lined the fence as the demonstrators moved in, but they were seemingly not prepared for what came next. Out came the bolt cutters and down came the fence. The 64-year-old Northcote man was the only one arrested. The rest went almost unimpeded into the works area, including former Victorian Premier Joan Kerner.
All stay back, please.
Jeff Kennett doesn't wake up. He won't be Premier after the next election.
How would you feel if you were arrested doing this?
Well, so be it.
Meanwhile, Grand Prix organisers say today's demonstration will in no way change their work schedule in the park.
Melbourne will get the Grand Prix. And we're looking forward in Albert Park, and we're looking forward to it very much, and I look forward to seeing you on race day.
Norm Beeman, 10 News.
Australia has apprehended 12 Indonesian fishing boats and taken 89 Chinese boat people into custody in a busy day in our northern waters. The Indonesian boats allegedly fishing in Australian waters were escorted into Darwin, followed later by the boat people's vessel. They're being questioned by immigration officials tonight and will be flown to Port Hedland Detention Centre tomorrow.
38 children and 51 adults were crammed aboard this 15-metre wooden fishing boat when it was intercepted off Darwin yesterday before being escorted into harbour by a customs launch. They're from Beihai in southern China. Our launch was warned away by customs officers, concerned that any disturbance around the fishing boat could topple some of the Chinese overboard. As far as the vessel is concerned, Australian security officers who were on board say it's in reasonably good condition. The Chinese were ferried into the Coonawarra Fleet Base here in Darwin, their faces well shielded from our cameras for fear of retribution against their families back home in China. Tomorrow they'll get a flight down to the detention centre at Port Hedland. In recent weeks, 300 people claiming to be refugees have landed in Darwin, the most recent simply pulling into a boat ramp and hailing a taxi, proving quite an embarrassment for local authorities. It's at this time of year that the seas to the north are at their calmest, and some patrol officers privately say they expect a flood of Chinese and Vietnamese to head south from Indonesia over the next couple of months. Ron Wilson in Darwin for 10 News.
Still to come in the late-night news, the helicopter rescue of a fireman seriously hurt fighting a blaze, and the rescue of a baby girl from a car which burst into flames.
Baby was taken from the car and rushed into the house, so I just grabbed a jug and I was pouring water on the child.
A baby girl is in intensive care in an Adelaide hospital tonight after being severely burnt in a car fire. It's believed the child was inside the car when the fire started.
This incinerated car is the only visible clue to this afternoon's horrific incident. It's understood the baby was seated in the car with another child when a fire broke out around 2:30 p.m. Neighbours and family members rushed to the burning vehicle.
The baby was taken from the car and rushed into the house. So I called the ambulance and the fire brigade, and then I ran into the house, and the baby was in the tub with the father. The father was trying desperately to put some water on it, so I just grabbed a jug and I was pouring water on the child.
The baby, who's aged around 1.5, was rushed to the Women's and Children's Hospital. She was admitted into intensive care. Her condition is described by doctors as extremely serious. The other child was uninjured. Fire investigators have yet to find out how the fire began. Police are interviewing witnesses and continuing their investigations. Nina Stevens, 10 News.
A 47-year-old Adelaide man has been charged with arson following a spectacular blaze in a plastics factory storage area. The man was apprehended at the scene shortly after the fire broke out in open grassland.
Firefighters were called to a grass fire in Blackburn Street at Kilburn about 10 o'clock this morning. When crews arrived, they discovered the flames had spread under the fence line and ignited the storage area of a nearby factory.
What they were confronted with was a large stack of plastic drink containers and recyclable plastics.
15 fire appliances and 45 firefighters were called in to battle the inferno, the thick pall of smoke dominating the Adelaide skyline. But the fire service thankful acrid fumes didn't settle on surrounding suburbs. Its estimated temperatures at the seat of the fire reached close to 1,000 degrees. 4 firefighters had to be treated for heat stress and smoke inhalation. Nearby residents were evacuated and the electricity supply shut down as the intense heat melted power lines. More than 45,000 litres of water a minute was poured onto the flames. It took more than 2 hours before the fire service was satisfied the blaze was contained.
What we were trying to do is prevent it getting into the second stack of plastic crates and also spreading into the factory.
Firemen are expecting to spend several hours cleaning up. The fire is regarded as suspicious and police are investigating. This afternoon, a 47-year-old man who lives near where the fire started was charged with arson. Neil Cross, 10 News.
A Sydney bushfire fighter was seriously injured late today when he fell down a cliff while fighting a blaze in the city's northwest. The man was rescued by the NRMA Careflight helicopter after falling 3 metres down a cliff near Pennant Hills. He was treated for head injuries during the flight to hospital. Fire authorities suspect arson is responsible for 14 scrub fires in the area. A Perth family is still recovering from the shock of an overnight ordeal at the hands of thieves, leaving the scene of a ram raid. The family's car was struck by a bottle of liquor thrown from another vehicle. When they stopped to inspect the damage, 2 other cars repeatedly tried to run them down, striking a 52-year-old man and throwing him 3 metres. Police say the attackers had ram raided 2 liquor stores and a sports shop earlier, and they're still at large. A man has died of injuries received this evening when he was a victim of Sydney's second hit-run accident this weekend. He was a cyclist knocked over in the inner west suburb of Five Dock. The car left the scene, the cyclist suffering multiple injuries. A hit-and-run in Mascot earlier left a woman and her 3-year-old son seriously injured. And Queensland police are searching for 2 men who shot at and assaulted a woman on the Sunshine Coast this afternoon. The woman went to investigate a strange car driving around a neighbour's property near Karoi. She told police she called out, telling the men to leave. They replied with 2 rifle shots, then chased her as she ran for help. Police say the men bashed the woman before speeding off in an orange Land Cruiser. New South Wales police estimate a crop of marijuana seized on the state's south coast today is worth $7 million. Officers from the Air Wing, the Drug Unit and the Drug Enforcement Agency brought more than 3,000 plants to Eden. Their special raid had targeted a site at White Rock Creek, 50 kilometres away. The police put a value of $2,000 on each marijuana plant seized. They say the site showed signs of habitation, but no one is being interviewed in connection with the haul. Clean Up Australia has set its sights on making our cities the cleanest in the world by the turn of the century. Clean Up organisers today announced a blueprint for the year 2001 in time for the nation's centenary.
It's inspired millions to band together each year to clean up our part of the world. Other countries have joined the Australian-led push to clean up their backyards after the United Nations agreed to promote a World Clean-up Day.
Still, you know they're coming into gear.
Today, Channel 10's Anne Fulwood helped Australian of the Year and project founder unveil his blueprint for the year 2001.
It's about the community identifying 2001 environmental and pollution problems, bringing them to our notice, and we'll then work to get industry, community and the government together to fix the problems.
The major problem identified in this year's clean-up was food and drink packaging.
There's no point in saying this is recyclable and then it ends up in landfill or you see it beside the road. That has got to be, that recyclable product has got to have a use.
The next clean-up day will be March 5th, 1995. In the meantime, organisers are asking Australians to treat every day as clean-up day and business to reduce its packaging. It's the largest community participation event in the country.
We make major contribution every year in the several hundreds of thousands of dollars category.
With Australia badly affected by drought and bushfires, the call is out to more volunteers to pitch in and do their bit to preserve the environment. Pam Mackay, 10 News.
Overseas news coming up next in the late news. A jumbo jet's emergency landing after a mid-air bomb blast. Filipino women desperate for paler skin. And a meowy Christmas from the Jingle Bell Cats. Late Night News. A Muslim fundamentalist group in the Philippines has tonight claimed responsibility for an explosion in a jumbo jet which killed 1 passenger and injured 7 others. The Philippines airline plane was flying from Cebu to Tokyo today when the blast occurred west of Okinawa, where it made an emergency landing. Passengers told how the blast came from an overhead luggage rack in the economy section. Some described a strange smell before the explosion. The Muslim group claiming responsibility is fighting for self-rule in the southern Philippines. They claim more planes will be targets in future. Failed entrepreneur Christopher Skase won't be home for Christmas. Appeals to a Spanish court over his extradition have not been heard, despite plans to bring the matter to an end this week. It's believed Spain's equivalent of the Australian Federal Court won't announce its decision until next Friday. The delay occurred when Skase's lawyers submitted last-minute medical evidence about the former tycoon's state of health. The 46-year-old has been held in custody in a Mallorca hospital since January. Australia's Bosnian community staged a noisy rally in Canberra, accusing Britain and France of siding with the Serbs. Protesters claim the result has been a massacre of Muslim women and children in Bosnia.
Free Bosnia! Free Bosnia!
It's a war raging on the other side of the globe, but for the Australian Bosnian-Herzegovinian community, it's not forgotten. Hundreds of people from Sydney and Melbourne today vented their frustration at the British High Commission in Canberra.
This is disaster for the humanity!
They want the British and French governments to support the lifting of the international arms embargo, calling for military intervention as the bloody conflict with Serbia drags on.
They are not prepared to allow UN soldiers there to do their jobs properly.
Police kept a close eye on the protest, which failed to draw a response from the British ambassador. Most European countries have agreed not to withdraw their peacekeepers from Bosnia. Demonstrators accused the French and British of supporting the recent Serbian attack on the UN safe haven of Bihać.
People are dying of hunger, people are dying from thirst, there is no medicine. The situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina is desperate.
Protesters later marched to Parliament House before launching another rowdy attack, this time at the nearby French embassy. Organisers say today's demonstration is just the start of an Australian campaign of pressure on the British and French governments. Brendan Stafford, 10 News.
A desperate desire for whiter skin by women in the Philippines has medical and social experts worried. Sales of a new lotion, which is meant to whiten skin in 4 weeks, are 3 times higher than the makers expected. Dermatologists warn it can be harmful to some people.
Users like beautician Rose Trias say it can make Filipino skin a shade lighter.
My face is whiter. I think it makes me beautiful if I'm white.
Bleaching soaps and skin whiteners have been sold for decades in the Philippines, but an aggressive advertising campaign is now pushing the idea that white is better, a message that has social critics up in arms. Sociologist Ricky Abad blames the Philippines' colonial past and white religious icons.
Being white is not only being associated with rich and the powerful and being beautiful, it is also associated with being holy, being saintly.
A survey done by the manufacturer showed that at least 60% of Filipinos want whiter skin. It seems for most, white is beautiful. This can be seen in numerous beauty contests and the local movie industry, both dominated by fair-skinned women. Last month, the lotion was recalled and tested by the Philippines Bureau of Food and Drugs. Now the product is back on the market, and the controversy only seems to have increased sales. The manufacturer now plans on exporting the lotion to neighboring countries.
I think it's a universal Asian desire to have a, fairer skin.
For women like Rose Trias, this is the way it should be.
Back for Christmas, the Jingle Bell Cats, the group of felines that had the 1993 CD, Meowie Christmas. A new CD and video has been released in America featuring some seasonal classics. For cat lovers. After the break, the back-to-work weather, Santa's helpers rumble into Melbourne, and sports tonight with Bill Woods.
Ahead in sports tonight, a wrap-up of the day's cricket, including Aussie against Aussie in the World Series, the Australian Open women's golf, wood chopping, and Queensland's Craig Hackett takes out round 5 of the Ironman series held in WA.
Now to the weather, and it's been a pleasant summery day for most major cities around the country. It was fine and hot up north, with temperatures falling until Melbourne, where it was really hot, 34 degrees. Hobart had a day's respite, although there's more on the way from Adelaide, which sweltered again today. The satellite photo shows clouds scattered across the top end and around the east and southern coasts. That slow-moving high is still in the Tasman, and a trough's moving east ahead of a cold front. So tomorrow, fine weather along the east coast after some early showers in Brisbane and soaring temperatures for Canberra and Melbourne. The heat's going to reach Hobart and Adelaide as well, although there should be some late relief for Adelaide. Finally tonight, another example of the way Santa has recruited Australian bikers to boost his team of helpers. The Motorcycle Riders Association spread some early Christmas cheer in Melbourne. It's their 16th annual toy run, donating gifts for Australia's needy children. Santa swapped his sleigh for a Harley for the day, as more than 2,000 riders chipped in with donations of all sorts of goodies. They'll be distributed by the Salvation Army to make Christmas a little merrier for children who otherwise would miss out. And that's the news for this Sunday, the 11th of December. Stay with 10 now. All today's sports action is next in Sports Tonight with Bill Woods. I'm Sandra, Sully. Thanks for joining us. Good night.